My name is Joanna Lee Calloway. I'm 29 years old. On November 27th, 2024, my mother called me home for Thanksgiving. She said it like it was a gift. We want the whole family together this year, Joe. It'll be different, I promise. I drove 23 miles from my apartment in Decatur to their house in Alpharetta, Georgia, the one with the wraparound porch and the 4-car garage and the backyard my grandmother had spent 40 years turning into something worth looking at. I turned onto Whitmore Lane at 10:52 a.m. The driveway had one car in it, Grandma Dot's 2003 Buick LeSabre, cream-colored. One hubcap slightly crooked. 214,000 miles on it because she told me the number last Sunday when I called her, the way she always did, proud of it like a badge. I sat in my car for a minute with the engine off. My mother's Escalade wasn't there. Neither was my brother Kevin's Land Rover. Neither was my father's truck. I already knew. Some part of me already knew. I went inside anyway. Grandma Dot was in the kitchen. She was 79 years old and 5'2", and she was standing at the stove stirring something that smelled like the first good thing that had happened to me all week. She turned when she heard the door. "Joe." She smiled, and it was real. "I was hoping you'd come early." I looked around the kitchen. Clean counters, no turkey in the roasting pan, no pies cooling on the rack, just her. And whatever was in that pot, and a small handwritten note folded on the island. I picked it up. The handwriting was my mother's. Neat. Looping, the kind she saved for things she wanted to seem casual about. "Joe, change of plans. Kevin surprised us with tickets to Asheville for the long weekend. Mountain house rental. It'll be wonderful. Grandma knows her routine. Meds at 8 and 6. Don't forget her blood pressure. Ones are the small white ones, not the big oval. There's a Stouffer's in the freezer. We'll be back Sunday. Love, Mom. P.S. This is honestly great experience for you. You're so good at this kind of thing. I read it twice. You're so good at this kind of thing. I'm a licensed social worker. I have a master's degree from Georgia State. I carry a caseload of 23 families in Fulton County. Kids in foster placements, mothers coming out of domestic violence shelters, elderly adults being assessed for cognitive decline. I make $54,000 a year doing work that would break most people in 6 months. But sure, good at this kind of thing. I folded the note, put it in my jacket pocket. Grandma Dot hadn't moved from the stove. She was watching me with those sharp brown eyes she had, the ones that missed nothing, that had been watching my family for 79 years and had filed away every single thing they'd seen. "They didn't tell you," she said, not a question. "No." I kept my voice even. "When did they leave?" "This morning, around 8. She paused the stirring. "Kevin called last night. Said he'd found a place in Asheville. Private chef, hot tub, the whole thing. Your mother had her bag by 10 p.m. Kevin, my brother, 35, commercial real estate developer, made somewhere north of $200,000 last year on commission alone. The golden one. The one who'd been golden since the day he was born 6 years before me and had never once lost that status regardless of what he did or didn't do." "Did they ask if you'd be okay?" I said. Grandma Dot turned back to the stove. "Your mother said, 'Joe will be there, Mom. You'll be fine.'" I didn't respond to that. There was nothing to say that wouldn't make me cry. And I wasn't going to cry in my grandmother's kitchen on Thanksgiving morning. Instead, I washed my hands, found an apron, and asked her what we were making. She had chicken and dumplings going. From scratch. The way her own mother had taught her in Macon, Georgia in 1962. We spent the next 2 hours in that kitchen, her directing, me following, and the house filled up with something warm that had nothing to do with the family who had left. At some point she said, "You know your grandfather built this house." I did know that. Everyone knew that. Pop Calloway, dead 11 years now, had built the Whitmore Lane house in 1978 with a construction crew he'd run himself. Calloway General Contracting. He'd started it in 1969 with a second-hand truck and a classified ad in the Atlanta Constitution. "Do you know who owns it now?" Grandma Dot asked. I paused. "Dad," I thought. She smiled into the pot. "Small." "No." She didn't say anything else, just kept stirring. I thought about that word for a long time. "No." We ate at the kitchen table, just the two of us, paper napkins and the good china she'd gotten out herself, because she said some things are worth using. The chicken and dumplings were the best thing I'd eaten since the last time she'd made them, which had been 3 years ago, which told you something about how often I'd been invited to family dinners. She asked about my cases, not in a vague, polite way, in a real way, the way she'd always asked, like she actually wanted to know. So I told her about the 6-year-old I'd finally gotten placed with a foster family in Brookhaven, how he'd started drawing pictures of dogs because his foster mom had one. I told her about the woman who'd come into our office with 2 kids and a garbage bag of clothes and had just 3 months later gotten the keys to a 2-bedroom apartment in East Point. Grandma Dot listened to all of it. "Do they know what you do?" she asked when I finished. "Really understand it?" "My parents?" "Your parents. Kevin." I thought about it honestly. "No. Mom says I should have gone into healthcare management, more upward mobility." Grandma Dot set down her spoon. "Your grandfather used to say there are 2 kinds of people, the ones who make money off of problems, and the ones who fix them." She looked at me directly. "I know which one you are." I didn't know what to say to that. I looked down at my bowl. "And I know which one Kevin is," she said. Just that. Then she picked her spoon back up. After dinner, she asked me to help her with her medications. I'd done it before. She had 4 prescriptions. Nothing complicated for someone her age who'd been careful her whole life. Lisinopril for blood pressure, a low-dose statin, vitamin D, metformin for the early-stage type 2 they'd caught 2 years ago. I set alarms on my phone for morning and evening doses, wrote out the schedule on an index card, and taped it to the inside of the cabinet door. She watched me do all of it. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I wanted to." She patted my hand once. Didn't say anything else. That night, I texted my boyfriend Marcus. "Family bailed for the mountains. It's just me and Grandma." His reply? "Of course they did. You okay?" "Yeah. Actually kind of fine. Want me to come?" "Tomorrow. Bring that pie you made last year. Already planned on it." I smiled at my phone in the dark of my childhood bedroom, which was no longer my bedroom. It had become a home office with a Peloton in the corner and boxes of Kevin's old financial documents stacked along one wall. I found sheets in the closet and made up the fold-out couch. I lay there thinking about my mother's note. "This is honestly great experience for you." Not, "I'm sorry we're doing this to you." Not, "I'm sorry we're doing this to you." Not, "We know this isn't fair." Just, "This is good for your career, sweetie." The career she'd spent 10 years suggesting I should abandon for something more financially legible. My phone buzzed. Kevin, in the family group chat, a photo. Log cabin, snow-dusted mountains behind it, everyone holding wine glasses on a deck. My parents in matching North Face fleeces, Kevin's wife Amber in a cream sweater, their son Cooper, age 4, grinning with a hot chocolate. Caption, "Grateful for this crew." "Happy Thanksgiving everyone," with a turkey emoji and a mountain emoji. I screenshotted it. I don't know why. Some instinct. Grandma Dot was already up at 6:45 a.m. when I came downstairs. She was at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a legal pad, writing something in the careful long hand she'd used her whole life. She closed the pad when she heard me on the stairs. Not quickly, not guiltily. Just naturally. Like she was done. "Sit down," she said. "Coffee's fresh." I sat. She poured. Outside the kitchen window, the backyard was all dormant rose beds and bare pecan trees. But even in November, you could see the shape of what she built out there. 40 years of intentional planting. The garden was the most ordered, beautiful thing I'd ever grown up around. We didn't talk much that morning. Just sat with the coffee in the quiet. At some point, she said, "Joe, do you know what your grandfather sold the company for?" I actually didn't know what your grandfather sold the company for. I actually didn't know the number. It had never been discussed around me. Not exactly. 1997. Sold Callaway General to a regional developer for $3.2 million. She said it matter-of-factly, like it was a historical detail she was relaying. "Your father thinks I spent most of it. Medical bills, the house maintenance, living expenses. He thinks I have maybe $40,000 left in a savings account and Social Security." I stared at her. "He's wrong," she said. My coffee cup was halfway to my mouth. I put it down. I took $2.4 million of that sale and put it into a managed investment account in 1997. Conservative allocation, index funds, some bonds, nothing clever. I've left it almost entirely alone for 27 years. It's grown to $4.1 million. She paused. The dividends generate about $90,000 a year. I live on $34,000 a year. I give the rest away. Grandma. Scholarship fund at Macon State. A transitional housing program in Atlanta I've been funding anonymously for 9 years. Your organization actually applied for a grant permit 2 years ago. She looked at me. I approved it. I felt something shift in my chest. The Whitmore Foundation grant? Yes. Our agency had received $18,000 from the Whitmore Foundation in 2022. I had written a thank you letter myself. I had never known. Nobody knows, she said. Not your father, not Kevin. I wanted to see. She stopped. Chose her next words carefully. I wanted to understand who people were when they thought I had nothing. I looked at her for a long moment, and I said, and I've been watching for a long time, Joe. She reached across the table and tapped my hand once, the way she did. I've seen enough. She went to her room after that and made a phone call. I could hear the low sound of her voice, but not the words. When she came back, she looked settled. Like a decision had already been made, and she just confirmed the last detail. Marcus came at noon with a sweet potato pie and stayed the rest of the day. He and Grandma Dot played 3 rounds of rummy at the kitchen table, and she beat him twice and was gracious about it, which he said was worse than gloating. I watched them from the doorway and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't have a word for it exactly. Chosen, maybe. That evening, while Marcus was loading dishes, Grandma Dot said quietly, "He loves you, right?" "I know. Hold on to that." Pause. "The ones who show up, you hold on to them." I nodded. She wasn't just talking about Marcus. My parents and Kevin got home Sunday afternoon. I was still there. I'd stayed all 4 days, which I think surprised them when they pulled into the driveway and saw my Honda still parked at the curb. My mother came in warm from the drive, cheeks pink, smelling like wood smoke and the cashmere scarf Kevin's wife had given her last Christmas. "Joe, you're still here." Like it was a pleasant surprise. Like she hadn't left me a note about frozen Stofers and blood pressure pills. "Didn't want to leave Grandma alone the whole weekend," I said. Something crossed her face. "Gone in half a second." "That's so sweet of you." Kevin came in behind her with 2 bags of artisan groceries from a shop in Asheville. He set them on the island without looking at me. "Hey, Joe." Then, to my mother, "Where do you want the truffle salt?" My father hugged me. Genuine, I think. He was always the one I was least sure about. Not cruel, not kind. Just absent in the way some men are absent. Present in the room and nowhere near you at the same time. Grandma Dot was in her chair in the sitting room. She watched all of them come in and said very little. Her eyes moved from face to face the way they always did. Filing. Recording. Nobody asked how her Thanksgiving had been. Nobody asked how her Thanksgiving had been. Nobody asked how mine had been either. 3 weeks later, December 19th, a Thursday, I was at my desk doing placement paperwork when my phone rang. Grandma Dot's number. "Joe, I need you to come Saturday. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." A pause. "I'm better than fine. Come at 2 o'clock. Don't mention it to your parents." I didn't ask questions. I said okay. Saturday, December 21st, I drove to Whitmore Lane at 1:50. A dark blue Camry was parked in the driveway I didn't recognize. Inside, Grandma Dot was dressed like she was going to church. Navy blue dress, her pearl earrings, the ones she only wore for things that mattered. She was sitting straight in her chair. Across from her, on the couch, was a woman in her 50s. Blazer, reading glasses pushed up on her head, leather portfolio open on her lap. "Joe," Grandma Dot said. "This is Helen Marsh. She's an estate attorney. She's been my attorney for 14 years. Helen Marsh stood and shook my hand. Firm. Warm. "Miss Calloway, your grandmother's told me a great deal about you." We sat at the dining room table. Grandma Dot at the head, me to her right, Helen across from us. Helen opened her portfolio. I saw my name. Joanna Lee Calloway. Over and over on multiple pages. Beneficiary. Trustee. Primary executor. Helen explained in careful, clear language. She had the tone of someone who had done this many times and understood what it cost people to sit in these chairs. Total estate value $4,140,000 plus the property at Whitmore Lane appraised at $780,000. My father $150,000. My mother $150,000. My mother $150,000. My brother Kevin $150,000. Designated charitable distributions $800,000 split between the Macon State Scholarship Fund, the Transitional Housing Program, and a foster family support organization in Fulton County. The remainder, $2,890,000, plus the Whitmore Lane property, to Joanna Lee Calloway, with full discretionary authority over any additional distributions to family. I couldn't speak. Grandma Dot reached over and took my hand. Her grip was stronger than it looked. You stayed, she said quietly. Every Sunday. Every time I called. You stayed when they left. I know you didn't do any of it for this. That's exactly why. I was crying. I hadn't decided to. It just happened. They'll contest it, I said, when I could talk. Let them. Grandma Dot's voice was perfectly calm. Helen's very good. Helen smiled. Small professional. The documentation of your grandmother's capacity is extensive. She's been consistently assessed over 4 years. This will hold. Helen had also prepared a letter. Grandma Dot had written it herself. Longhand, 3 pages. Helen would be present when the family convened to hear it read. We set the date for December 26th. Christmas Day was quiet. Marcus came over to my apartment. We made his mother's red beans and rice and watched old movies. He proposed at 9:47 p.m. on my couch, not at a waterfall, not with fairy lights, just with the ring he'd been carrying for 3 weeks because he said there's never a wrong time when it's right. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I texted Grandma Dot that night. Good news. Her reply came in 4 minutes. I know what kind. I could hear it in your voice yesterday. Congratulations, baby. December 26th. Helen arrived at 1:30. We set up in the formal dining room, the table that only came out for Thanksgiving and Easter, and the occasional event that required the good china. Grandma Dot was dressed again in the navy dress. I sat beside her. My parents arrived together at 2005. Kevin and Amber came separately 5 minutes later. Cooper had been left with Amber's mother, which I thought showed some parental instinct. Little kids shouldn't have to see this. They all came into the dining room and saw the table, the attorney, the portfolio, the neat stack of documents, and their expressions went through the same sequence. Confusion, then wariness, then something sharper. Kevin sat down first. He'd spent a career reading rooms. His face settled into something careful and watchful. Amber sat beside him and looked at her hands. My mother's eyes landed on me. Joe, what is this? I don't know, Mom. Which was mostly true. I knew the shape of it, but not every word. Grandma wanted us all here. My father looked at Grandma Dot. Mother, are you all right? Sit down, Robert, she said. He sat. Helen introduced herself. She was crisp, professional, not unkind. She explained that Dorothy Elaine Calloway had amended her estate plan on December 14, 2024, and had requested this convening per the terms of her own letter. She opened the portfolio. My mother's hand found my father's arm. Helen read the distributions. Each number landed like a stone in still water. $150,000 for Robert, $150,000 for Linda, $150,000 for Kevin. Kevin's jaw tightened. He'd been doing mental math since Helen started talking. I could see it. And to Joanna Lee Calloway, Helen said, the remainder of liquid assets totaling $2,890,000, plus the property at 44 Whitmore Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia, appraised at $780,000, along with full discretionary authority over any additional family distributions. Amber whispered something under her breath. My mother's voice came out high and strange. How much? Total, approximately $3.67 zillion in Joanna's designation, Helen said, plus the property. That's our house, Kevin said. First thing he'd said since sitting down. His voice was controlled but barely. It's my house, Grandma Dot said. Built by your grandfather, in my name, since 1978. She looked at Kevin steadily. You assumed otherwise. I let you. My father tried first. He went soft, the way he did, the voice he used when he wanted something. Mom. This isn't, you don't have to do this. We can talk about this as a family. We are talking about it as a family. Grandma Dot didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. Helen, please read the letter. My mother started crying before Helen got past the second paragraph. The letter was 3 pages in Grandma Dot's careful long hand. Helen read every word without rushing. It began, I am 79 years old. I has been watching my family for a long time, and I believe that people show you who they are not in what they say, but in what they do when they think no one important is looking. It went through everything. Not just Thanksgiving, all of it, the years of it. Kevin's college graduation party that I hadn't been told about, the time my parents flew to New York for the opening of Kevin's first commercial development and sent me a $75 Visa gift card on my birthday the same week. The Sunday calls I made to Grandma Dot every week for 9 years, consistent, the way I'd call a friend, not an obligation. The Thanksgiving where I stayed 4 days in a house that wasn't set up for me, and made sure she was warm and fed, and her medications were right, and nobody in Asheville had called once to ask if she was okay. Jo did not do these things for me because I asked her to. She did them because she sees me. She sees me as a person, not a problem to be managed or an asset to be positioned. In 54 years of being a mother and grandmother, I have learned that this is rare. I have learned that you cannot manufacture it, and you should not reward its absence. My mother was openly crying now. My father's face had gone gray. Kevin kept his expression flat. He was the one who scared me. The quiet ones, the calculating ones. He was already somewhere else in his head. I could see it. Robert and Linda and Kevin, you will each receive $150,000. This is not nothing. Do not treat it as punishment. Treat it as the beginning of a chance to understand what you have spent a long time not understanding. If you would like Joanna to consider additional distributions in the future, you will need to show her, not tell her, show her, that you see what I saw. She will decide, not me. I am trusting her judgment because she has earned that trust. I am not trusting yours because you have not. Helen folded the letter, set it down. The room was quiet for 10 seconds. I counted them. Kevin broke first. He stood up, chair back, controlled, not yelling. Kevin never yelled. This is undue influence. You had 4 days alone with her. You're a social worker, you know exactly how to work a vulnerable adult. Your grandmother is not a vulnerable adult, Helen said. Her voice was ice quiet. She has been formally assessed 3 times in the past 4 years. She is sharp, oriented, and acting entirely of her own volition. If you'd like to pursue litigation, I encourage you to review the documentation first. It will save you the $150,000. Amber put her hand on Kevin's arm. He shook it off. My mother turned to me. Her face was wet, mascara tracked in 2 lines. Jo. Please. This is not what Grandma wants. She gets confused sometimes, you know that. I don't get confused, Grandma Dot said. Sharp. Immediate. I get underestimated. There is a difference. My mother closed her mouth. My father looked at me. He looked tired, more than angry. Joanna. That money is more than you've earned in your entire career. You don't know what to do with it. I work in social services, Dad. I heard my own voice come out steady. I was surprised by it. I know what 2 million billion can do. I've been watching what $18,000 did for 2 years. He didn't know what that meant. That was the whole point. Kevin left without saying goodbye. Amber followed him, and she caught my eye at the door, a look I couldn't fully read. Apology, maybe. Resignation, something. My parents stayed longer. My mother kept reaching for different angles, different tones. Guilt, then pleading, then a sharp moment where she said, your grandfather would have wanted this shared equally, and Grandma Dot said, very quietly, don't tell me what Harold wanted. I knew him for 51 years. You didn't know him at all. That ended it. They left at 4:30. The driveway was empty by 4:32. Helen packed her portfolio, shook my hand again, told me I'd receive account access within 72 hours. She told Grandma Dot it had been an honor. She meant it. I could tell. Then, it was just us. Grandma Dot and I sat in the dining room for a while without talking. Outside the window, the backyard was all bare bones and winter quiet. The rose beds looked dead. They weren't. My phone started. Kevin, 4:31 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. My mother, 4:44. My father, 5:02. A text from Amber at 5:15. Joe, I want you to know I think you're a good person. Whatever happens. I didn't respond to any of them except Amber. I texted back, thank you. That was all. The next 3 weeks were an education in who people are when they're frightened. My mother called 14 times before I answered. When I did, she cried for 6 minutes without stopping and then said, "You can keep most of it. I just think the house should stay in the family." I told her the house was staying in the family. She meant Kevin's family. I didn't say that. Kevin sent an email through his firm's letterhead. I forwarded it to Helen at 9 a.m. the next morning. Her reply came back in 40 minutes, empty. Save it. I saved it. My father called once, left one voicemail. In it, he said 3 things that were actual apologies, and 4 things that were explanations of why things had been the way they'd been. I counted. I listened to it twice, and then I did something I hadn't expected to do. I called him back. "I heard your voicemail," I said. "Joe." He sounded exhausted. I know I wasn't. I know, Dad. I didn't let him finish and then fail the ending. I know. We talked for 22 minutes. It wasn't resolution. It wasn't closure. It was something more modest than that. 2 people acknowledging that something had happened and that it had been real and that maybe something could be different. Slowly, if we were careful about it. It was more than I'd expected to get. I set conditions, formal ones, that Helen sent by certified mail. My parents and Kevin were each invited, not required, invited to do 3 things if they wanted me to consider any additional distributions. Family therapy, professionally facilitated, with an independent therapist I didn't choose. 20 hours of volunteer service with an organization serving vulnerable adults or children in Georgia. Not a corporate day of service. Not a check. Actual hours. And a letter, handwritten, that answered one question. What did you think my life looked like? And what do you understand now that you didn't then? My mother enrolled in therapy within the week. My father took longer, 6 weeks, but he enrolled. He started his volunteer hours at a senior services center in Roswell in February. He called me after his 3rd shift and didn't say much, but his voice sounded different, like something had moved. Kevin sent a text, "This is not how families work, Joe. I'm not performing for your approval." I didn't respond. His $150,000 was his. What he did with it was his. Some choices make themselves. Grandma died on March 3, 2025. She went the way she'd done most things, quietly, in her own time, in her own house, in her own bed. I was there. I had started staying over on weekends in January, not because anyone asked me to, because I wanted to. We played cards. We watched her programs. She taught me 3 things about the rose garden that I wrote down in a notebook so I wouldn't forget them. She told me about my grandfather in ways she'd never told me before. Not the legend of him, the actual man. The one who'd been difficult and funny and made mistakes and loved her thoroughly anyway. The morning she died, she had asked me to read to her. I read from a Marilyn and Robinson novel she'd been working through. She fell asleep while I was reading and she didn't wake up. I read 4 more pages anyway, because it seemed right. Because she would have wanted to know how the chapter ended. The funeral was small. She'd specified that. There was no conflict at it. I think everyone understood that Grandma had made her decisions and that fighting at her graveside would have been the kind of thing she'd have noted and filed away, even from wherever she'd gone. Afterward, Kevin and I stood in the parking lot of the funeral home for a moment, just the 2 of us. He looked older. He said, "She loved you differently." I said, "She loved all of us. She just knew me better." He nodded. Got in his car. I don't know what that conversation was. A beginning, maybe. A very small door left slightly open. I'm not ready to walk through it yet. Maybe that's honest. Maybe that's all I can offer. I put $900,000 into an expanded grant program through the organization Grandma had been funding for 9 years. The transitional housing work. I gave them capacity they'd never had, and I watched our director cry at her desk when she got the call, and it was the best thing I've seen in a long time. I donated the balance of the charitable designation, $800,000, as Grandma specified, split between the scholarship fund in Macon and the foster family support program. I kept the house. I'm not living in it yet, but I'm not selling it. I go there on Sundays and I work in the garden, learning the things she left to be learned. Marcus and I are getting married in October. Small. The backyard at Whitmore Lane, if the Roses cooperate. She would have liked that. My father came to help me clear the gutters last month. He showed up with a ladder and didn't make it into a moment, he just cleaned the gutters. We ordered pizza after and ate it at Grandma Dot's kitchen table, and he told me about a family at the senior center, a daughter who visited every day, every single day, who had driven 40 minutes each way for 2 years, and he got quiet in the middle of it. I didn't do that, he said. No. For anyone. No, I said. He nodded, ate his pizza. Didn't offer an excuse. That's not forgiveness. I don't know yet if I'm moving toward forgiveness or just toward something more honest, which is that people are complicated and damage is real, and sometimes the most you can do is sit at a table together and acknowledge what's true. I'm a social worker. I know better than most people that change is slow and usually imperfect, and sometimes it doesn't come at all. But I also know it happens. I've seen it. I've been the person in the room when it does. My name is Joanna Lee Calloway. I'm 29 years old. I help families in crisis find their way to something safer. I make $54,000 a year doing it, and I am very, very good at it. I'm also apparently a millionaire. That second thing didn't make me who I am, but it did prove something I'd spent a long time not being sure of. That someone had seen me clearly, had watched carefully, and had decided that what they saw was worth everything they had. That's the thing about being invisible for so long. When someone finally sees you, really sees you, it doesn't feel like money. It feels like being told you weren't crazy. That it was real, that you always mattered, even when they acted like you didn't. Grandma Dot knew that. She planned it that way. And if I close my eyes in that garden on the Sunday morning, with my hands in the soil she spent 40 years turning into something beautiful, I can almost hear her saying, "I told you, baby. I always knew." I've thought a lot about what Grandma Dot was actually doing all those years. Not the money part. That came at the end, and it still doesn't feel entirely real. But the watching part. The way she sat in that chair and let people reveal themselves, quietly over decades without ever tipping her hand. She wasn't passive, she was patient. And I think there's a difference that most people never learn to make. What happened to my family, to Kevin, to my parents, wasn't bad luck. It wasn't unfair. It was the natural result of choices they've been making for 30 years and calling something else. They called it prioritizing. They called it investing in success. They called it being practical about where attention goes. What they were actually doing without knowing it was deciding who mattered. Every Thanksgiving trip, every unreturned call, every time they looked at Grandma Dot and saw a responsibility instead of a person, that was a choice. It accumulated. And eventually, the accumulation became a record. Grandma Dot kept that record and she kept it honestly, and when it was time, she acted on what it said. That's what I mean by consequences being built slowly. Nobody in my family woke up one morning and decided to be cruel. I don't think they're cruel people. I think they got very comfortable in a version of the world where certain people, me, Grandma Dot, anyone who wasn't economically legible in the way Kevin was, existed in the background. You don't have to be actively mean to cause that kind of damage. You just have to stop paying attention. You just have to keep choosing over and over the thing that cost you nothing. What Grandma Dot gave me wasn't just money. It was proof that paying attention to people, really paying attention, the kind that requires you to slow down and actually show up, is not a weakness. My whole career I'd been told implicitly that the work I do is admirable but not serious, not ambitious, not the kind of thing that compounds into anything. What Grandma Dot understood, and what I think I'm still learning to believe about myself, is that the way you treat people when there's nothing obvious to gain from it is the most accurate thing about you. It's more accurate than your salary. It's more accurate than your LinkedIn. It tells the truth about your character when everything else is just performance. I think about my father cleaning the gutters last month, showing up with a ladder and not making it into a speech. That mattered to me more than I expected it to, not because it fixed anything. It didn't fix 30 years, but because it was evidence of something trying to change. Real change doesn't announce itself. It just shows up on a Saturday morning and does the thing without asking for credit. That's what I'm watching for now. Not words, not explanations, actions repeated over time without an audience. Grandma Dot taught me that. She lived it for 79 years. Quiet and consistent and entirely certain about what mattered. And she left me, along with everything else, the clearest possible demonstration of what a life built on that certainty actually looks like. I want to live like I understand that. I'm still learning, but I know now that the life I've been building, the cases, the families, the work that doesn't always have a clear ending, is not the consolation prize. It never was. It was exactly what it looked like. And someone who mattered saw it clearly, even when I couldn't.